Paris, the 16th of May, 1937. Just after 6:30 in the evening, a train pulls into the Porte d'Oreille station on the Paris Métro. The doors slide open on a carriage that should have been empty. A woman is slumped against the window. She is 29 years old. There is an 8-inch stiletto buried to the hilt in her neck. Nobody saw it happen. The train had been in the tunnel barely a minute. Her name was Leticia Turo. By day, she worked in a factory. By night, she informed for the Paris police, and for the past year she had been inside a secret organization, reporting on the men who ran it. Those men met after dark, in an office building on the Rue Matignon. The building belonged to a cosmetics company. Downstairs, chemists mixed hair dye for the salons of Paris. Her killer was never found. This is the story of how that company became the largest beauty business on Earth, taking in more than 43 billion euros a year, and of the secret it carried for 50 years before someone forced it into the light. It ends with an heiress worth billions who lost the right to decide what happened to her own money. To understand it, we go back 30 years to a young chemist staining his own hair in a rented room near the Tuileries Gardens. He was trying to make something harmless. Eugene Schueller was born in Paris in 1881, the son of 2 pastry chefs. The family had money once and put it into the Panama Canal and lost all of it. Eugene grew up watching his parents work behind a counter and decided early that he would never take orders from anyone. He graduated in 1904 from the Institut de Chimie Appliquée and took work as a laboratory assistant at the Sorbonne. Then a barber came to him with a problem. French women in that era avoided hair dye, and they were right to. The dyes that existed were built on lead. They burned the scalp. The barber wanted a color that would not hurt his customers. Schueller agreed to advise him. Then he walked away and started working for himself. He rented a room near the Tuileries Gardens and began mixing formulas. The first attempts failed. So did the ones after. He tested each version on his own hair, standing over a basin in a room that stank of ammonia. In 1907, it worked. A synthetic hair color that was stable, subtle, and did not burn the skin. He called it Aureale, and he carried the bottles into the hair salons of Paris himself. On the 31st of July, 1909, he registered the business under a name that said exactly what he was selling: the French Company of Harmless Hair Dyes. Harmless. That was the promise printed on the paperwork. If you are enjoying this so far, a quick like and a subscribe genuinely help us keep going. And if you would rather listen than watch, House of Ruin is on Spotify as a podcast. The link is in the description. Thank you for being here. Because the man who registered that harmless little company in Paris was about to start paying for something else entirely. Schueller was a real innovator. He understood advertising decades before his competitors and built laboratories when most cosmetics were still made by guesswork. But there was something else in him. He had no patience for democracy. He believed it handed power to weak and incompetent men. For most of the 1920s, that was just an opinion at a dinner table. In 1936, the government of Léon Blum came to power and gave French workers paid holiday for the first time. Families who had never left the cities in summer went to the sea. Almost overnight, a country that had never needed sun protection needed a great deal of it. Ambre solaire sold in volumes Schueller had never seen. The beaches of Biarritz and the Côte d'Azur filled with people carrying his bottles. A socialist government had just made him rich. He hated them for it. He looked at Blum and saw everything he despised. He looked across the borders at Germany, at Italy, at Spain, and saw strength instead. He was heard complaining that France lacked the dynamism of a Hitler pushing the world forward. The company had by then moved into offices on the Rue Matignon, a short walk from the Champs-Élysées. And in that same year, a naval engineer named Eugene Schueller founded a secret organization. The newspapers of Paris called it La Cagoule, the Hood. Its members covered their faces. Its purpose was to destroy the French Republic and replace it with a dictatorship modeled on the regimes rising elsewhere in Europe. Deloncle needed money. Secret armies are expensive. They need weapons, safe houses, and men who can vanish for weeks at a time. He found a chemist who agreed with him about France. Eugene Schueller bankrolled La Cagoule. He also let Deloncle and his men use the headquarters of his company on the Rue Matignon as a place to meet. The company was called L'Oréal. Those were the men Leticia Turo had been sent to watch. That was the building. Now look at what that organization actually did. In January of 1937, a Russian economist was stabbed to death in the Bois de Boulogne. In May, Leticia Turo was killed on the Métro. Her case was dropped and remains unsolved, though investigators believed the answer lay inside the group she had infiltrated. And on the 9th of June, in the Normandy countryside near Bagnoles-de-l'Orne, two brothers were driving home. Carlo Rosselli was the most important anti-fascist exile in France. His younger brother Nello was a historian, visiting from Florence. That afternoon, they had driven Carlo's wife Marion to the station at Alencon. She needed to be back in Paris in time for their eldest son's birthday. On the way home, their Ford was followed by a second car. On a quiet road near the hamlet of Couterne, they were forced to stop. They were shot with a revolver and then stabbed. The bodies were found the next morning in a wood, thrown one on top of the other, covered in mud and blood. Nello had 17 knife wounds. He left a wife and 4 children. The killers were Cagoule men, acting by the accounts that came out later on behalf of Mussolini's government in exchange for a delivery of rifles. 3 months later, 2 time bombs went off at night at 2 employers' offices a few streets from the Arc de Triomphe. 2 Paris policemen were killed by falling debris. In November, the police finally moved. They had infiltrated the group, and they arrested around 70 men, Eugene Deloncle among them. It should have ended there. Then war came, the prisoners were released to fight, and the German army arrived in Paris. And the man who had funded the hooded men did not go quiet. He got closer. When German troops marched down the Champs-Élysées in 1940, Schueller welcomed them. He told an employee that the Germans were strong and well organized, and that the other side looked finished. That September, Deloncle founded a movement to work openly with the occupation, the Mouvement Social Révolutionnaire. Its founders included Eugene Schueller. On the night of the 2nd of October, 1941, militants from that movement moved through Paris carrying explosives supplied by the German Security Service. Between 2:05 and 4:05 in the morning, they placed devices at the doors of 6 synagogues. The Grand Synagogue on the Rue de la Victoire, the synagogue on the Rue Pavée in the Marais, the one on the Rue des Tournelles, Nazareth, Montmartre, Rue Copernic. Nobody was killed. The buildings were torn open. The men who supplied those explosives worked for Helmut Knochen, the senior German security officer in Paris. 9 months later, Knochen's apparatus helped organize the roundup at the Velodrome d'Ivry, when more than 13,000 Jewish men, women, and children were arrested in 2 days and sent east. Most never came back. Remember that name? While this was happening, business at L'Oréal was extraordinary. Between 1940 and 1944, as France went hungry, sales rose to roughly 4 times what they had been. Schueller's personal wealth increased around tenfold. In June of 1941, he said aloud that no peaceful revolution was possible without a bloody purification first, and that it would consist quite simply of quickly shooting 50 or 100 important personages. That is on the record. After the liberation, French investigators recovered a list naming 45 people as agents of Knochen. One line reads simply, E. Schueller, businessman. Under interrogation, Knochen described him as a willing collaborator. By then, Deloncle was already dead. And the way he died is the strangest part of this story. By 1943, Deloncle had decided Germany was going to lose and began making contact with German officers who were plotting against Hitler. The security service found out. In January of 1944, agents came to his apartment on the Rue Lauriston to arrest him. Deloncle was armed, and his son Louis was with him. He opened fire and was shot dead on the floor of his own home. Louis was seriously wounded and survived. The men who came that night also took away Deloncle's wife, Mercedes, and a young Cagoule activist the family had been sheltering. Both were sent to Fresnes prison. That young man was Jacques Corrèze. Deloncle had raised him almost as a son. While Corrèze sat in Fresnes, France was liberated, and the men who had helped the occupiers were hunted down. Eugene Schueller was brought before a French court. The judge examined the evidence and found that Schueller had shown activity in favor of Franco-German collaboration, and that he had indeed given money to Deloncle's organization. Then the witnesses arrived. They testified that he had sheltered Jewish employees and secretly funded the resistance. Among the men who spoke for him were his future son-in-law, André Bettencourt, and a young man who would one day become president of France, François Mitterrand. Eugene Schueller was acquitted. He walked out of that courtroom a free man, and then he started hiring. Jacques Corrèze had fought on the Eastern Front alongside German units. After the war, he was sentenced to 10 years and served 5. On his release in 1949, he married Mercedes Deloncle, the widow of the man who had raised him, the woman who had been in that apartment the night her husband was shot. Then he went to work for L'Oréal and became chairman of Cosmer, the company's American operation in New York. For decades, the man running the brand in the United States was a convicted collaborator from a French terrorist organization. Louis Deloncle, the son who took the bullets on the Rue Lauriston, went on to run L'Oréal's Spanish branch. And for more than 30 years, the company's German headquarters sat on land confiscated from a Jewish family during the war. Eugene Schueller died in 1957 and left everything to his only daughter. Liliane had lost her mother at 5 and attached herself completely to her father. She had started on his factory floor at 15, labeling bottles of shampoo. The secret went with the inheritance and stayed buried for another 30 years until L'Oréal made a business deal with the wrong man. His name was Jean Friedman. Born in Warsaw, raised in Paris. At 15, He joined the French resistance and blew up trains. He was put on a train to Buchenwald, and he jumped from it. And in July of 1942, hearing the roundups were about to begin, he went back into occupied Paris to warn his family. Because of him, they were not among the 13,000 taken to the Vélodrome d'Hiver. 46 years later, that man walked into a boardroom at L'Oréal. In 1988, Friedman and his brother formed a film company with L'Oréal called Paravision. The following year, L'Oréal bought Helena Rubinstein, which had factories in Israel and was placed on the Arab League boycott list. To get off that list, someone decided Friedman had to go. He was Jewish and held Israeli citizenship. He refused to resign. So his resignation was forged and recorded at a board meeting that never took place. They picked the wrong man. He sued, and then he went into the French archives and started reading. He documented the wartime record of Jacques Corrèze. He also found 60 articles written during the occupation by André Bettencourt, the husband of the heiress, for a Nazi-financed anti-Semitic paper. Bettencourt admitted the articles were his and asked the Jewish community for forgiveness. Corrèze resigned in 1991, expressed regret for acts he said he might have committed 40 years earlier, and died that same year. The secret was out. The family kept the company. What the family could not keep was itself. In her 80s, living in a mansion in Neuilly-sur-Seine outside Paris, Liliane Bettencourt became close to a society photographer named François-Marie Bagnier. Over 4 years, he received gifts worth more than 1 billion euros. Life insurance policies worth 446 million, 95 million in cash. A Picasso. The island of Aros in the Seychelles. Her butler, Pascal Bonnefoy, was worried about the woman he worked for. He hid a recorder in the house and let it run, and captured 21 hours of conversation inside those rooms. When parts of it reached the French press in 2010, it destroyed careers. There were more than 100 million euros in undeclared Swiss accounts. There was the island, also undeclared. And there were advisors speaking to the richest woman in France the way you speak to a child. At one point, her wealth manager reminds her that she signed the island over to Bagnier. Her reply, recorded in her own home, is a question. She asks whether she had really wanted to give him an island. The scandal reached the government. Here it matters to be exact. Eric Worth, the minister at the center of it, was tried and acquitted of every charge, and the case against President Nicolas Sarkozy was dropped for lack of evidence. Liliane was not so fortunate. In 2011, she was diagnosed with dementia and placed under the guardianship of her own grandson. The richest woman in the world lost the right to decide what happened to her money. 10 people went on trial in Bordeaux. On the eve of it, her nurse tried to hang himself. Bagnier was convicted and ordered to repay 158 million. She died in 2017, aged 94, in Neuilly-sur-Seine, the suburb where she was born, no longer speaking to her only daughter. L'Oréal is now the largest cosmetics business on Earth. From its headquarters in Clichy, north of Paris, it owns Maybelline, Lancôme, Garnier, Kiehl's, and CeraVe. Somewhere in the world, one of its products is bought almost every second of every day. Liliane's daughter, Françoise Bettencourt Myers, became the first woman in history to hold a fortune of $100 billion. The The money a chemist once handed to men in hoods on the Rue Matignon is now the largest fortune ever held by a woman. And the company still carries the name he chose in 1909, when he called what he was making Harmless. Leticia Turo is buried in Paris. Her murder has never been solved. If you made it this far, subscribe and leave a comment telling us which empire you want us to open up next. There are more houses like this one, with names you use every week and histories nobody put on the label.